Hey Kid here with a review and a comparison of two of the most popular black powder reproductions that are out there. The 1858 Remington, and 44 by the way, and the 1851 Navy Colt, which is in the 36 caliber. Now an awful lot of the Navy Colts that are referred to as Navy Colts out there, they're selling them as 44s. Instead of the 36, but the actual Navy Colt was a 36 caliber. This 36 caliber, by the way, most of them show up with these brass frames. The claim is that the Confederate guns were being made with brass frames because the Confederates didn't have a lot of steel. Well, it's certainly true they didn't have a lot of steel, but in fact, historically, that's not very accurate. There was only a handful of brass frame revolvers made back during the war between the states, or shortly before that. So the claim really is a little silly. The other problem about the brass frames is, of course, brass isn't as strong as steel. If you're shooting the 44 cals, you have to either shoot kind of a light charge, or most of the old timers will tell you the frames will eventually deform because the brass just isn't strong enough. With the Remington, you don't have that problem unless. Now you will see reproductions of the Remington that will have the brass frame, but historically that's just not very accurate. And again, with a 44 caliber, I really don't think you're going to want to have a brass frame gun unless you're only going to shoot it a little bit, and you probably want to go with relatively light loads. Now if you take a look at this Remington, it's a big gun. This guy is hefty. It's got quite a bit of a weight. Of course, it shoots a 44. It actually shoots really a 45 because the bullets I use in this are a .454. So it's really kind of a 45. But an interesting thing about this is the recoil is actually quite mild. It's not bad at all. It's easy to handle for pretty much anyone if you don't mind the weight, obviously. Another thing you'll notice is that even though I have a small hand, my hand pretty much fills that grip. And with the 36 caliber, the little Navy Colt, you can see that even with my relatively small hand, it kind of overflows on that grip. And that is one of the things that some people will complain a little bit about, is that grip being a little on the small side. Really made for less modern hands, because most of these are reproduced fairly accurately in size. I'll talk a little bit about shooting on it. The Remington has, of course, a top strap, a metal top strap, and you can see that there, for a rear sight, there actually is a notch in that top strap that gives you a bit of a rear sight. It's a little bit primitive, but it works, and the gun is quite accurate and easy to fire. With the Colt, with the little Navy Colt, because it has no top strap, you don't really have a rear sight. What you have is a notch in the hammer. So, you know, it's relatively hard to see. It's a little on the primitive side, but it points extremely well. And, you know, as long as you can kind of put up with relatively small sights, it works well enough. Both these guns shoot a little bit to the left. This one shoots a little bit low, this one shoots a little bit high. But you can adjust for that just by using the old Kentucky windage approach to things. Let's talk a little bit though about reliability. Based on my shooting of these two particular guns, I'm going to have to say that the Remington is a significantly more reliable gun. A big part of that, I believe, is because just the function of the frames. With the Remington, you'll notice that the hammer itself is actually notched. It's not the full-size hammer all the way into this particular part of it. In fact, there's a relatively small space in here for the hammer to slide into and hit the percussion cap. Now, those percussion caps, when they fire, tend to break into a variety of pieces. With the Remington, I find that it doesn't tend to foul it up much. Every once in a while you'll get a little piece jammed in there, but not very often. It's really pretty reliable. With the Colt, however, you'll notice that the hammer is the same width all the way in, and there is quite an open space here. And what I found in shooting the Colt is that it is not unusual at all for pieces of the percussion cap to fall down inside this area here to get into where the hammer is and gum up the works. Now, the internals of these guns, which are almost exactly, so they're very, very similar designs, are not very heavy. In fact, they're somewhat delicate, and when you actually open it up and you look at the trigger springs and those parts. And once you feel this thing binding up, shouldn't have done that. Once you feel this binding up, you really don't want to try to force it because you can damage it. My experience has been it is not unusual at all to have those parts fall inside the Colt, whereas it simply has not happened to me with this one. And I've put probably 400 rounds through this and maybe 150 rounds through this one. So the reliability really, really goes to the Remington, which when you read some of the older accounts, I think matches well. Just sheer aesthetics, the looks, that Colt's a pretty gun. I mean, it really is. Something about the open strap look to it has just a really beautiful design. The Remington looks almost actually more modern. It's a hefty, hefty gun. Either way, they're a lot of fun. They're actually surprisingly accurate, and if you have the patience for black powder, and it does require some patience, I think you would enjoy shooting either one. Thanks for watching.